Hi, my name is Casey Berman, and welcome back to the Octopus Movement podcast, where we dive into the world of nonlinear with our founding members. Today, I'm honored to be speaking with one of our founding members, Tina Miller. Tina brings over 25 years of leadership with strategic communication skills to bear in her roles as a business strategist and media influencer. I got to tell you, I just love reading these intros in the beginning, and I've gone through to see the intros of people that I've interviewed on this podcast, and it's just fascinating to see what everyone is doing. This is going to be no exception. Tina's extensive experience spans, you name it, franchise ownership, business analysis, initiating multi-platform startups. She's doing a documentary, and it's all focused on developing growth opportunities within organizations. As a film producer, she's dedicated to change of all kinds that she's going to get into with us, and she expertly merges media creation with strategic objectives to foster sustainable development and corporate responsibility. Now, there are a lot of big words in there, and I'm going to challenge Tina, and she's going to help us understand what all of these mean and kind of what is the thread between them all. Tina, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Casey. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'm on the island of Maui, and you are in a camper van, I learned. How?
Well, currently I'm in Kentucky, and we paused our road trip to stay where I might have good Wi-Fi and we can plug in. So right now we're in Kentucky. We left Michigan yesterday, and we are headed to Florida. South Carolina is staying tonight, and then Florida the next day.
I love it. I love it. Doing all these big, huge, fantastic things, and you're just on the road with the internet. Isn't this new world? I know the headlines are all scary, but isn't the world kind of cool still in some ways, you know? So
Oh, it
um,
is.
it is. It is. All right. So first off, your path. I want to hear it. It's interesting. It's non-conventional. You went working in consulting for big American businesses, producing influential media projects. You do executive coaching. You just created a documentary. You were talking to me beforehand about how you were, advising a politician. Pull a thread through all of this. Besides being a super person, how do you do all this? Are these unique skills? Are they pull a thread through all these different types of things that you're doing? How do you do this? How do you fall into this?
Yeah, so my life story is quite crazy, but quite honestly, I would be very bored if it was anything different than the path that I had taken. Single mom, first bought into a Curves fitness franchise. At the time, it was the largest growing fitness franchise. Did that for 10 years while I was raising my girls, and at the point that I didn't renew the next agreement, I went into a consulting firm north of Chicago, and I would go out to about 100 businesses a year, anywhere from 80 to 100 businesses, spend 1 to 3 days analyzing their business, their deficiencies and what they were costing them, and basically, putting the money that they're leaving on the table in front of them, and hoping that they will want to, fix the boat that's leaking.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then one of my clients happened to be a media production firm. And when I wanted to stop flying and traveling so much, I ended up and kind of forced my way into this media production firm. And the boss was like, yeah, we don't have an opening, but I really want to figure out a way to bring you on board. And it was so crazy because he said, well, why don't you just tag along, for a couple months, and we'll see what happens. And our first meeting was in Detroit. And he said, do you have your driver's license on you? And I was like, yeah, why do I need it for the meeting? And he said, well, we're meeting the Consulate General of China. And so we'll need to, go up into the top of GM building for this meeting. And so it was pretty comical, especially as a woman, because he thought I was there to take notes. And I was like, no. And by the end of the conversation, I'm giving him ideas. We're talking like business partners. And that position, I ended up becoming director of marketing, probably with a few months into it. And then shortly after that, the chief operating officer. So I learned a lot of my media production. Even though I was a COO, I was involved with the production side as well, of client relations. And I started to do work for the Michigan Attorney General. She was wanting some PSAs, and we clicked right away. She wanted a humorous twist on everything so people would pay attention and watch. I love jumping in something like that. And so before I know it, I'm producing her PSAs as our COO. So that kind of like just fell upon me, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I loved getting behind projects that were about impacting, positive impact and making change. So I had always had this dream about doing a piece, not necessarily a documentary, but some kind of piece where people could see themselves in each other. They were exposed and educated that, we go far beyond our skin color. And so I had this dream for about 10 years. And I got to a point that I said, okay, I'm kind of tired of working for somebody else's dream, and I need to make that leap and do what I've been dreaming of.
Right.
And so I did that. A couple years ago, I left my position as COO, started a nonprofit, and started a documentary that I thought I was going to quickly, have out there. I met with PBS. They gave me a letter of support, and I said, I'm going to have this out in less than a year. And they were like, well, you're talking about a 6-series docuseries. You're looking at 3 to 5 years. And I was like, no, I know this world and everything like that. So we're 2 years into it. They were absolutely right, but it has evolved, and it is so much more than what I would have done a year ago now.
Right.
And so it is the research and the study of environments that enable us to organically get exposed and educated to people that are different than we might have grew up and were exposed to. So there are some areas of the United States, some communities that people never leave the four corners of their town. So you have generational racism that's never going to stop the cycle because people aren't exposed to that. What you're learning is maybe, stereotypes, and it's not actually truthful. So the environments are when they come out of that town and they join a sports team. So they're part of a university or a professional sports team. And this is their first time of being exposed to people that look different, maybe speak different,
Right.
everything. And organic relationships happen through certain environments. And we don't talk enough about like what are the dynamics that makes that happen. And a lot of times they build lifelong relationships. And then, so why can't we do that as communities? And so it's really kind of studying what happens organically over sports, medicine, military, politics, music.
Right.
And so I'm doing interviews with people that are high profile so we can get some people watching it. And it's been
That's
so
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah, because I'm being exposed and educated at the same time, really.
You mentioned in the beginning just how you got that job, and I run a business which helps unhappy attorneys leave the law for non-law jobs. And the one thing that we talk a lot about is you're going to get the job through the person, through your network. Sure, you can apply online and let's try it, but it's really about getting out there. And just here you are, and you're connecting with people, and he says, I don't really have budget now. There's no job opening, but I got to find a way, right? And just for everyone out there, it's a great lesson that, sure, you may find the job through traditional apply online and go through the process, but most jobs are found through, nice to meet you over coffee. Let's keep this conversation going. And in some ways, you even write the job description with the company, right?
Exactly.
So it's just fascinating how you're a perfect example of that. So talk to me a bit, and I want to go back. And what is the name of the documentary, by the way, just so everyone knows?
An Environment for Change.
And when release date roughly you're looking at when?
We are hoping 2025. So that's part of the reason I'm in a camper van. We're on the road doing interviews. So I have my old production studio
I love it.
set up, and I go where the interviews are. Some are online, but some are in person. And so, yeah.
So how we have a audience, nonlinear thinkers, and all types come and watch the podcast. But you have done brand, you've done operations, you've done public relations, corporate culture, marketing, and all this. Are these all just disparate terms that cut their own silos? Is there a connection? How should we sort of think of this world of public relations, marketing, communications? How do we get our arms around it?
So I think being a nonlinear or embracing your nonlinear side is really the key to it, because you have so many people that are, marketing themselves online, and it's very cookie cutter, and frankly, you can kind of look across board from people running their business, people running their media, all of their PR. You really have to think out of the box if you want to compete. And so that's kind of just the main key is, what have you tried? Why hasn't it worked? And are you willing to take this journey with me? Because, there are many paths to get to where you're going. It's probably just not one you've thought of, because you're in this linear world. That's safe, it's comfortable. And so it does take a bit of risk, but I'm confident in what I do. And I think that comes across, not trying to sell myself at all. That's one thing that I learned as an analyst is, I never want to sell myself in a meeting, and I shouldn't have to. So if I sit there and we're talking about, it's a lot of questions of what has worked for you, why isn't it working for you now?
Right.
But then it starts going through just even deeper than that, and so by the end of it, I want to be able to go, all right, well, good luck, and start to pack my stuff up, because I do want that commitment of the person go, well, aren't you going to help me? Well,
Right.
I don't know if you're committed. And it's like that with any project. It's like that with a PR project. It's like that just analytical business. You have to have commitment from the other person that they want to change, that they're willing to change, and they have to ask for it.
So that's an interesting point, because where I was going to go is there needs to be a bridge. There needs to be a little bit of EQ as well, right? So if you're a nonlinear thinker, it's easy to go off into areas linear thinkers aren't. It's easy to potentially get frustrated if they're behind you, if you will. How have you been able to bridge where, particularly with, say, the diplomat from China or other people who think differently than you, how are you able to still be empathetic to them or be able to take it slowly when your mind is already light years ahead of them? Do you need to sprinkle in some EQ there as well? Is it more of, like you said, challenge them and just throw your ideas out there and see if they hook onto it? What's been your experience?
Well, I mean, you can, in a nice way, if you're asking the right questions and you are challenging them, I'm not necessarily laying out on the table all of my ideas of everything that I would do. But you can quickly come to, an agreement that your linear way of thinking, or the way that you were taught, or the way that you learned out of a book in college or whatever, that I'm sitting there because it's not working for you. And so it's kind of easy to say that, okay, so what you've been trying and what you learned out of this book or wherever, learned from another business, it's not working for you. So have you tried this? Have you tried that? And most of the time, their mind hasn't even went to the nonlinear side because they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
So you have to, when you're in survival mode, you keep the blinders on, you try to stay focused. And so all this, the other stuff that's happening on the outside in the nonlinear world, that I'm thinking boom, 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 they never even see it because they're just
Right.
in survival mode. So I think it's kind of a combination of listening to what they've tried and then, really getting them to come to realization that, okay, this isn't working. I've got to try something different. And, my mind isn't in that world of, thinking of all kinds of different ideas and routes to it. So show me some things you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully they're open to it. Hopefully you've built some rapport with them or some trust. That goes a long way to them sort of letting the big ideas come out. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, all of my clients, there's a personal relationship there. They're trusting me, and they're trusting me with not a lot. It's, not only trusting me with money that they're spending, but they're really trusting me with strategy and future. And if it's in politics, it's getting elected. And if it's brand, it's that's where growth happens. And you strengthen your brand, you grow. You strengthen your brand, you stay, you compete. So it really is about building relationships and trust. And 100%, I honestly want to see them succeed. So, the old saying, if you win, I win. And that's
Right.
just really true. So I'm passionate about what I do. And I think that comes across. And so, yeah, it is about building a relationship, in the beginning, where that can grow.
Now, I like that line that, the best way to defeat or reduce stress is to be prepared. But I want to ask you, people put into your hands very important stuff, not their lives, but their strategy, their growth plan, their business future. It's important. How do you deal with that? How do you not collapse under the responsibility?
Well, I think it's a level of confidence that you have to have.
Yeah.
And also that the confidence in if something starts to go in a different direction, I have my finger on the pulse and I'm going to know it before it
Yeah.
gets too far. And we're going to switch directions, and you can trust that I'm going to identify that before it happens. There's always a learning lesson. So there's no bad things that happen. There are only learning lessons and
Yeah.
stepping stones. It's like that, in real life. It's like that in business. And so, I'm not going to tell a client that nothing's going to go wrong, but I will tell you that I will be monitoring and having my finger on the pulse of your business enough to know when it's starting to go in a different direction. And then we switch, because
Yeah.
I don't have just one idea. I have many. So I prepare myself for hedges before they happen. I have been kind of out in this world for enough time to know things that happen already. But just to be prepared, and really that's what I'm doing with their business anyway, is preparing them to always have, they're always going to have challenges. I'm not going to be there to hold their hand forever.
Yeah.
And so they're going to come up with challenges. I will say in politics, you have to think of every angle. Can it be used against them? What are, the whole SWOT, your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the other candidates that are
Right.
running. And so with politics, you really have to preempt some of those hedges, because that's an area that you really can't let it get there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the attorney general, she cracks me up, and she should be on Saturday Night Live, but she's willing to push the line a little bit more than her legal team is. So
Yeah.
it's like with her, when we're doing stuff, legal's got to look at it. They tell them, no, you can't do that. And then we find a middle ground there.
Yeah.
But we're preempting some stuff, and we have, the right people in the right seats to help with that as well.
Yeah. No, politics is a little bit of a different animal, highly sensitive like that. But for the most part, you're on it. I think that's a great point, is things are going to happen.
Yep.
I think, what was it, Mike Tyson, that said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And so there is going to be a punch coming. And I'm a big sports fan. And I think even when my team the San Francisco Giants wins 11-0. It's great to see that, but it's also kind of boring. Like
Yeah.
you want a tight game. You obviously you want your team to win, but you want a
Yeah.
tight game. It makes it a little more exciting.
Yeah.
So we're at the second half, but winding down. But I want to talk about leadership for a moment, because you're a leader. You have worked with many leaders. Again, we've got a different type of audience, a nonlinear type of thinking audience here. I'd love to hear just examples. You don't have to name names, but just characteristics of good leaders, and where does the linearity fit into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, leadership is about giving your people the right tools, but then having enough confidence in them to watch them execute that, whether they, have some hiccups or not. That's okay, because they're going to come back stronger anyway, and they're going to come back, learning from it. But I guess what I have found is it's a bit of kind of giving them the confidence to think on their own a little bit, and really to think out of the box. And sometimes that happens with people that, internships, or clients that are going into an industry that they've not been into, and so you give them the tools, but then you also have to kind of let them fly. And to me, that's probably one of the best ways to lead, is to know, I have enough confidence in you. I'm here if if something goes wrong. But I want to see you succeed, and I'm your cheerleader.
Yeah.
And so I think leadership is sometimes getting out of the way of the people that you've given the tools to, and being their cheerleader and letting them know that they can do this, and you're there to support them.
Yeah.
I have been with leaders that micromanaged their people right out the door, and it's just like disheartening to see you have really, really good talent come in, and a leader that doesn't trust,
Yeah.
and wants to micromanage everything. And it's just so frustrating, because people have a lot of potential, if you just give them the tools that they need, and let them go. And a lot of micromanagers never see that potential, and they lose some of their best people by feeling like you get behind me and I'm gonna lead. No,
Yeah.
you get in front of me, and I'm gonna watch, and I'm gonna make sure everything's fine. I'm gonna check your surroundings, but I'm gonna be back here, or you're going to walk beside me, or you're going to walk in front of me.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's probably one of the key, things. And then listening, being able to listen, and listening without thinking of what you're going to say. A lot of times as a leader, you want to say the right thing. You want to be in charge of a meeting or the conversation. And so you fail to listen.
Yeah.
And so when you fail to listen, and people don't feel like they're listened to, and they're being micromanaged, it's just a recipe for disaster. And I'll tell you, so I have had the opportunity to be with some people that were great leaders. And one in particular, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and he has the greatest stories. But the thing that you see in him, and why he was able to lead, is the passion to make change, the passion to help people. And he wanted to see everybody succeed that was around him.
Mm-hmm.
And so people followed him. And so he was almost like a natural leader by, happenstance, because they saw his passion, they felt his passion, and they wanted to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's been really cool. So I think that that's key. And I've been across like a bunch of different types of leaders, and I've watched them evolve. And that's pretty cool to have that happen.
Yeah. See that
And
progress.
yeah, and to know that even though you're a leader, you still have room to grow,
Mm-hmm.
and you should grow, and you should expose yourself to new things. Throwing the nonlinear side of that is your people are going to come up with ideas that are probably out of the box. And if you give them the opportunity to do
Yeah.
that, you might find that, this is something that you've been missing because you were micromanaging. So
Yes.
I guess allowing them to be nonlinear thinkers and giving them the support they need in that.
I think that it's a great definition, and that idea of trust and the listening, the active listening. And I heard some great advice, which is if you're the leader in the room, in a boardroom or meeting, talk last. You can't unring a bell. So if someone hears your opinion in the beginning, they want to keep their job, they're going to try and fashion their opinion into the theme that you're talking about. Just nod your head, talk last, give your opinion later, because otherwise you won't be a good listener. And even if you're trying to be there, people will try and fashion it to something in line with what they think you want. Now, I want to ask you an important question for everyone kind of listening at home. And that is, you've seen, again, a lot of people, and similar to in your documentary, how there are people who live in a certain silo and they've been taught racism or taught beliefs or whatever, and that's all they think out there. The same situation happens to so many of us around fears and blockers. We all think we're in our own world. We're alone. I'm the only one that suffers this.
Mm.
Again, don't need to name names, but the high profile people you work with, the important people, the confident people that you work with, what are some fears, blockers, issues they struggle with that they overcome, or they at least mitigate and reduce so that they can move forward? They're just like us. What are some things they deal with?
They are. And that's the thing about building relationships with high profile people, is coming to the table knowing that they are just like you and treating them same. A lot of people treat them so different that they really never get to know them. And yeah, you're right. They're the same as us. I think imposter syndrome is like in all of us, and it's, and you'd be shocked to know some of the high profile people that really suffer from that.
Yeah.
And that gets in their way. I think the fear of, once you get to a certain point, is saying the wrong thing. We're in a world of people are taping and
Yeah.
always have a camera on you. And so I think some of them do a really well job at being themselves and being natural, or they just hide away and you never hear from them, again, because they're so worried that they're going to say something wrong in the public. But, that's another thing. And I think that, it to us is like, oh, I would love to have that problem. But there's a lot of people that they really feel alone because they can't freely go out in the public without security detail and everything like that. And it's a lonely world for a lot of people in that world. And it's not what we all make it out to be absolutely all the time. I mean, there's highs and lows for all of us.
Yeah. No, it's great. All right, a few minutes left. I want to get you back to your producing and back in Kentucky. Hopefully a fun question. If you could snap your fingers, wave your magic wand, and invite anyone living or from the past, real or fictional, and invite anyone into your world, into your life right now, who would it be and why?
Well, I mean, so this question came up a while ago, and so I guess if it was somebody that wasn't here, it would probably be Martin Luther King. If it was somebody that was here, it would absolutely be Obama. And some of that, they have some of the similar traits, but I think with Obama, he really figured out a way to lead, still be himself, still raise his family, still stick true to his morals and his values. And he really did not change. That's something that I absolutely love about some high profile people, is when they are just themselves. They're real. And they're like that when the camera's on or when the camera's off. And so I really respect that of him, his role as as a father, as a husband, and of course as the president. But I think he leads by example. And what he does outside, at home is exactly the person that he is when he was in the White House or when he's in front of a camera. And so he really does walk the walk. He leads by example, and I would just love to pick his brain. He loves music, loves, sports a little bit. And I think he's just a fun, cool guy. And I think we all could learn something from him. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Any quick thoughts, advice, thought starters, tips, hacks, anything that we can leave with the audience?
I would just say one of the big transition points of my life was when I left my job as a COO, and taking that leap is scary, and so I would say, take the leap. You don't have to have a title to make a difference. That was a hard one for me. I was like, well, who am I now? I'm not chief, operating officer anymore. And so it took me a while to transition, but my gosh, I'm in control of my own destiny. And I'm living, working the way that I want to. And we only get one life. So I would say that just take the leap and have confidence in yourself, and, know that you might go through some challenges, but my gosh, it's going to be worth it to be in control of your own destiny.
Yeah. Great advice. When I did a similar thing many years ago, my mom, who was a little, hesitant, or you're leaving a good job, what are you doing? But I'll never forget, she came over to my apartment and she put a magnet on the refrigerator which said "Leap and the net will appear." So that's been something that has been helpful. Tina, thank you so much. Fantastic advice, fantastic stories. Just really appreciate you joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Casey. I've enjoyed it as well.
Great. Well, everyone, thank you again for another episode of the Octopus Movement podcast. Please join me and all of my other great podcast hosts on future podcast episodes that are coming up every week. So happy to have you here. Signing off, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks.